So this is the Slingshot pressure plate I've been waiting on. Comes in a box like this. You can see there's a box inside a box. So you can see that. Pull this out. So here's the actual pressure plate itself. And then they ship you a gasket that is thicker. You can see that the gasket's thicker. So it gives you a little more clearance. So that comes in the box. And then here's the Slingshot pressure plate. So for a YFZ450. And you can see all the piece parts and stuff are stored in there. They put these couple screws in here to hold it, basically to hold this in place so that the bearings don't escape. But that's how it comes shipped. So it's packaged really well, so nothing can get really damaged. So you get the gasket and you get the pressure plate, and you basically, there's some hardware here. I think they're a little bit longer screws than your stock ones. So that's how it ships. At least that's how mine shipped. Okay, today we're gonna change out the regular clutch pressure plate for the Slingshot pressure plate. So you can see I have the quad jacked up on its side so that I don't basically have a bunch of oil and stuff run out. I'm going to take off this cover and I'm going to install this Slingshot clutch pressure plate, if you will. And there's this instructions that come with it, tell you basically what to do. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting that in. This one connection here, you just got to depress the pedal a little bit. I got a 1/4 inch drive and the socket fits in there fine. So I'm just taking these bolts out right now. So I got all the screws loose. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay them in a pattern. So there's the one that's kind of a hard one to get out. You can see here what I'm doing. So then I know. So I'll turn that one upside down so I know that that one's the one. And then I'm going to take this cover off here, but I need 2 hands. So there's the cover off. And here's the old pressure plate. And let me grab the new one to show you. So here's the new one. It'll go in its place. And this is the one that's got this is a Slingshot. So this has got the ball bearings in there that will hold the plates tighter. By the way, you can also use a tool like this to speed up the process. So you can see I got all the screws and springs out. I just put them right there in the cover. And I'm going to go ahead and get this pressure plate off. And I'm going to have to use 2 hands maybe. Maybe not. So there's the old pressure plate off. And I need that. That goes back in here. Okay. So then I need to read the instructions. So remove stock pressure plate plus 1 fiber. So 1 fiber. So one of these fibers has got to come out. So just the fiber. So it'll come out right there. And I did ask Kevin, the guy that designed the clutch, and he actually said yes, it will be a metal that will go up against the new pressure plate. So the metal will go up against here, and he said it'll actually make it make the pressure plate last longer by not having a fiber there. So I did double check with him on that. Okay, so I'm working on step 2 here. Place spring spacers and ball bearings and then the new pressure plate. Well, they come in the pressure plate already. And use the 2 new bolts to compress the top plate down, trapping the ball. So there's these 2 bolts here, and they're just, you know, they're finger tight. And you take that off, if I can get a hold of it here. So you can see the other bolts are just kind of stuck in there. And then here's all your ball bearings that are in here. See, those get thrown out when this thing spins faster. But those are all loose. And then down in here, I got to dig out these little things in here. That's what's going to compress the springs. So I'll put the springs down into here, and then I'll put the pressure plate back on and secure the 2 bolts that I just took out. And then I'll get it in the bike, and then I'll pull those 2 bolts back out and put in the 2 that was holding just a pressure plate on. Okay, so I got the springs in here, and I got the little caps as it shows. Now it wants me to basically, I believe, put this top back on. So I have to line this up, and then I'm going to tighten down those 2 bolts to smash down the springs and all. So I'll do that next. So here I have it. As you can see, those bolts are a little bit short, so I gotta push this down and tighten these up and go back, and they'll smash this down. And then eventually these will come out and they'll go in these spots here. Okay, so I got this started and I questioned this a bit, but so you got to get these 2 screws in, and you got to smash these springs down. So to get these bolts to start, because they're just a little short, you got to put pressure on this thing to get them in to start, and then it wants to try to pull the threads out at the top. So you got to make sure you keep pressure down until you get at least a couple, 2 or 3 threads engaged, because there's quite a bit of tension here on these springs. But I got it. So once I'll go ahead and draw this down so these ball bearings don't come out, because if not, these ball bearings will come out all over the place. Get this down tight enough, then I'll put it in the bike. Okay, so I got those drawn down, and you can see those ball bearings won't come out, but that's exactly how this thing works. As this thing spins, of course it's going so fast, so they're all the time out. But then that puts more pressure up against the bike or on those plates to keep them from spinning, to get all your horsepower to your wheels. So those 2 screws, draw it down, then you take it to the bike and you put these into the inner hub. See, those are just loose. You can see I'm just spinning it. And then I'll take these out and I'll put those ones in these other 2 holes, and then I can start putting on you know, the cover and torquing all this stuff down, you know what I mean? All that, the remaining things that are left. Yeah, I thought I'd show you the back of this pressure plate here, so you can see those 2 screws that are coming through. Okay, so I got it in. Now I had to take these screws out because they kind of were on a bind with here, and it made it a little difficult to get in there, but so you can see how this thing is. So now I'll just start installing, these 4 remaining screws, and then take these 2 out once I get all these in, the 4 in. Almost forgot. The thing that I like to put on is some blue Loctite, and I put a little bit of that on these spring screws, and I'm going to put some on the cover just to make sure that these don't come loose. And you'll notice as I start tightening these down, it starts taking the pressure off these other 2 screws I had here, and it starts putting them on all these. See how that's loose now? Starts putting all the tension on the ones that are into the inner hub. So I got all 4 of those screws in. Now I'm going to take these ones back out. As you can see, they're both loose because all the tension is on the inner hub and not on these screws anymore. Long screws. So now I have them, so I'm going to install each one of these in here. We're going to put some Loctite on them first. There they are. So I got all 6 of them installed. Now I just need to torque them all down, and I use the factory specs to torque them down, and then we'll be ready for the cover and the gasket. So now the process is to torque these all down, and I usually go back and forth in a cross pattern, but they need to be torqued down to 8 Newton meter, and like I said, I go cross pattern wise. So the next part, so I got all the bolts in there, torque all the spring down to factory specs. So I got all that stuff torqued down, and it says check to make sure that there is at least 50 thousandths between the steel top plate and the lockup. So basically between this plate and the lockup, which is the aluminum with the ball bearings in it. So here I've got a 40 thousandths and a 10 thousandths, put them together for 50 thousandths, and I'm basically go around and make sure it looks like it's got clearance everywhere. You can see it's got clearance. Kind of hard to do one-handed, but so I got clearance everywhere. So it says 50 thousandths clearance. So I'm measuring that. I'm measuring right in here. Sometimes it's hard because of this way this thing is, but there you can see it. So trying to make sure there's that clearance. So I got that done. So now I'm ready to put on the side cover, and I'm going to check it first too, just see how it fits. Remember, the gasket is a thicker gasket, but I'm going to check it first just to see what it looks like with the regular gasket and see if it looks like I have clearance. So you can see I got the cover on without the thicker gasket, and it goes on. The problem is when I pull the clutch in, it's probably going to push out on that cover, but we're going to see here. So I'm going to pull the clutch in and let's see what happens here with the cover. You can hear it's hitting it. So the next thing I'm going to do is I cleaned up this surface really well, and I also cleaned up the surface on the motor really well to make sure that I didn't have any oil or anything there. And I'm going to apply the gasket and put the cover on. And I'm going to use the same blue Loctite again on the screws. And remember, those are the ones I put down here in an order so I know which one went where. So this is the thicker gasket that comes with it. And then here's here's the stock gasket. So you judge for yourself. You can see they're quite a bit thicker. So there, I got the cover on with the thicker gasket, as you can see there. Still got it all loose here. Make sure it seems good, and I'm going to go ahead and put the screws in with Loctite. So when I put some Loctite on there, I usually just put a line on it, and then it tends to run around. Put that in there. I'm just putting all these in, get them all started with Loctite, and then I'll go back around and torque them all down. So the next thing to do is to tighten these cover bolts down, and those get tightened down to 10 Newton meters. So there it is. Successfully put in a slingshot clutch. So I'm going to get it down off the jack, go get the key, and we're going to try it out and see how it works. So we got it fired up. Make sure we don't have any leaks anywhere here. I'm going to take it around the yard and make sure I get some oil splashing out in there in the clutch area and see what's going on. Make sure it ain't got no leaks. Well, I ran a pretty good heat cycle on it. I don't see anything leaking. So I'm going to go around and test, retorque these bolts and see how that is, but she definitely grips. So these are all the parts I had left. The one plate we removed, right? The stock pressure plate, the stock screws, and then the stock gasket. So I'm going to I'll just hold on to all this stuff because, you know, never know. If I sell the bikes, I may pull the slingshot out of it and not sell it with the bike.